Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to give you a little overview of the last couple months and where I'm at now. So as you probably know, I went back to intuitive eating, having stepped away from keto and decided, okay, I need to recommit myself to eating intuitively and listening to my body and not just following a diet plan without any regard for how I feel internally. As a coach, I truly believe that there is middle ground in between completely eating intuitively without any kind of structure and having some kind of structure that allows you to function at an optimal level. That is, if your goal is performance and building muscle. So I think it is really important that we have some structure, but that structure needs to be internally informed. So for myself, learning this balance has looked like going full intuitive eating back in the summer. And then I decided I wanted to be vegan, which was, again, some sort of structure, but within that umbrella of foods that I could have as a vegan, I let myself eat what I wanted in the day. But I found myself still kind of eating 5 or 6 meals a day because that's what I'd been doing as a bodybuilder. And then I decided I really want to try keto, just completely switch gears, have a fresh perspective on my diet, see if I can get digestion in a good spot. I experienced a lot of bloating when I was vegan, so I wanted to see if I could improve that and maybe even stabilize my blood glucose a bit, which was a fun experiment to run with my blood glucose NutriSense monitor and allowed me to learn a lot about my body in that process. Well, as I started keto, cutting out carbs, I started circuit training at the same time, and my calories actually went down a bit because I wasn't eating as frequently. I was pretty full most of the time, and with much fewer options for food on the table, being on a keto diet, I just really didn't have enough carbs, obviously, to fill in those calories. So I was adding a lot of fats to foods, but not enough to disturb digestion, and so what ended up happening is my calories went down. And I felt pretty good on that. I felt like I was tightening up a bit. My weight actually stayed the same, but I was feeling pretty good. Digestion was still pretty slow in that I wasn't having a bowel movement every day. It might have been every 2 or 3 days, but benefit was I wasn't experiencing any bloating, which had been a significant problem as a vegan. So fast forward, I got to this point of overtraining, which I knew my body was really beat up. I had very low energy. I found that as my calories went down, my output went down as well. So my step count in the day started to decline gradually, which is just a testament to how intelligent the body is at maintaining homeostasis. And then I got really sick and I had a cold perhaps or the flu for 2 weeks and I was really beat up, and it just occurred to me that clearly my body's immune system is not functioning at the highest level right now, which is a red flag and something that I really need to address if my goal truly is to honor my body and learn how to operate out of those internal signals that my body is sending me. So I started eating a balanced diet again, which for me tends to be higher protein. I really do like a lot of fats in my foods, and I'm not a huge carb person naturally. So it ended up being just, again, a fairly balanced diet with moderate carb intake. And that was going pretty well. I really enjoyed that and everything seemed to be working. I felt supported in the gym, performance was good, my weight stabilized. Throughout this whole process, despite what my diet was, I've stayed within 3 or 4 pounds of my, what I would call my stable weight or my set point weight. So that indicates to me that I'm where I need to be. So I know my weight's gonna take care of itself at this point. That's a lesson that I've learned this past year. What I have to take care of is making sure that my body's getting the nutrients that it needs to function at the highest level. And for me, that means having energy to go train in the gym, that I'm recovering from my workout so that I can get in the gym again the next day. So not having excessive soreness, not having inflammation around my joints, pain, issues that would prevent me from being able to show up the next day in the gym. And I also want to be doing yoga. So with yoga, 4 times a week or so, I have to make sure that I'm recovering not only from my training, but enough to do yoga. So those are kind of my markers for sustainability, as well as just general energy levels throughout the day. And for me, brain performance is huge. I want to make sure that as a coach, I'm sharp, I'm efficient and effective at what I do, that I'm engaged with the people I'm around, whether that's my clients or whether that's friends and family, that I can be really mentally sharp and in tune with the tasks that I need to take on in the most effective way possible. And then digestion. I want to make sure that digestion is in a good spot. And that's something that truly throughout my life has not ever been great. Even as a baby, I sometimes attribute this to not having been breastfed, which we know is really great for gut health. But I've always had, as a child, a lot of nausea, car sickness as a baby, lots of reflux, and just intermittent constipation, just very slow digestion in general. So that has been an ongoing problem, and it's gotten worse at different points in my life. I would say the times that my digestion was best probably was when I was on prep, and that is a time when I'm definitely under eating. I'm not eating a lot of volume of food overall, and so I feel pretty good. My digestion isn't very slow because I'm not taking that much food in, but it was fast enough that I was having a bowel movement every day, probably with the supplementation, the fiber supplementation I was using, and just making sure I was really hydrated. But a prep diet isn't sustainable. So I'm kind of crossing into this unknown territory of what does it look like to establish healthy digestion? It's not something I've ever really had before, except in the prep scenario. So what does it look like to have a normal, balanced diet and to be able to have healthy, sustainable digestion? In the past, I've definitely abused my digestion. I've used a lot of artificial sweeteners that don't necessarily agree with my digestion. As a bodybuilder, we go through periods of having to overeat in volume of food in order to get enough calories. And so I would, for months on end, go to bed pretty bloated every night, not necessarily have great bowel movements. I would use coffee, like stimulants and sweeteners to actually kind of help myself go to the bathroom. So I know that I haven't really honored my body. And having gone from anorexia and then going through the process of recovery from that, in the acute period, I dealt with a lot of digestive issues that regulated somewhat over time, but again, never got to the point of what I would say is optimal. So digestion has always been something that's a little bit off for me, but it's never been something that I've truly honored and structured my day around improving. Well, about a month ago, my digestion started going downhill. I was experiencing like gas and bloating every single night, like pain throughout the night, and waking up in the morning still feeling full, still feeling uncomfortable. And as of right now, I'm training fasted in the morning. I like that feeling of having an empty stomach, but I was waking up with stomach pain, so it was hard to be in the gym and feel just uncomfortable the whole time. Well, I made a commitment to myself as step number 1 that I was going to cut out sweetened drinks, which is a really challenging thing for me. And if you've watched my channel in the past, you probably know it's something that I've attempted several times. And it's one of those areas in which I often don't have a lot of self-belief because I've seen myself slip back into the habit of abusing those substances in order to, most of the time, manage fullness and sometimes just to get a dopamine hit of having something sweet. If you've ever been in a severe diet, maybe like me, you've used energy drinks or sweetened like diet beverages or even like pre-workouts, different things like that that are sweetened that can kind of make you feel full and have a tinge of the satisfaction of a meal without the calories of that meal. Unfortunately, these sweeteners can wreak havoc on digestion, for some people just having them at all, and for other people in excess. Well, I had definitely gotten to the point in December where, regardless of the amount, my digestion was definitely in a bad spot. With this discomfort every single day, I knew I had to make a change. And with how heavily I was depending on artificial sweeteners, I knew that was the first step. We often know the first step that we need to take. We just look for evidence otherwise, or we wait until we have enough evidence externally from other people, from a coach, telling us that it's time to make that change. So this was something that I had to decide to do on my own. So I made that call, and I committed that if I, for 90 days, stay away from sweetened beverages, that I will allow myself to book a tattoo appointment, which is something that I put off because I'm not great at prioritizing myself in certain areas like that with something that I might want to do but never really seem to find the time for. I said, you know, this is a reward. I think I need a reward, because as of right now, I'm getting rewarded every time that I have a sweetened drink, but I'm not getting rewarded in the long term at all. My digestion is going downhill, so I know that that is the opposite of a reward. But how do I provide myself a reward without it being the thing that I normally turn to as a reward, which would be the sweetened drinks, because it felt like a catch-22. But I knew that I needed to have something bigger, a bigger why to look forward to. And I could say better digestion, but I also knew that just because I cut out sweeteners wouldn't necessarily mean that I had better digestion right away. So I needed something completely separate. So I told myself 90 days, and then I can book a tattoo appointment. And with the money that I'm saving from artificial sweeteners, like those drinks every day, $4 energy drink, $3 coffee, probably pretty quickly it'll add up enough to afford what I'm wanting to get. So it made sense in my mind. So I set that goal, and I'm on day 12, I believe, right now. And the first few days were really tough, but I wrote a contract to myself and a promise and commitment, a paragraph I can go back and read when I'm questioning it. And even on the days when it's been hard, I remember my why, and I know I've got 90 days, so I'm gonna commit to this process. Despite that massive win, digestion has not gotten a lot better, at least at first. So I started really paying attention to what was affecting my digestion. I started a food log. I would log what I had and what symptoms I had, and what I was finding is this consistent pattern of all day my digestion's good, even if my bowel movements are a little bit irregular. My digestion's good in that I'm not having pain, I'm not having discomfort or indigestion, I'm not having gas, I'm not having bloating. That's a big one for me. Until about 6 at night, and then every night I'm feeling uncomfortable. And I'm someone who I like to eat later in the day, so I typically would prefer to delay my breakfast and then eat towards the end of the day. But I was finding that I couldn't do this because my digestion was worse at the end of the day. So I had to kind of shift the way that I was eating my meals. And I started changing what meals I was having at night, thinking, okay, if my last meal is maybe a smoothie or something a little bit less digestively taxing, like I'm not having a big bowl of veggies and chicken, for instance, or I'm not having a ton of fat, like something that digests quickly, I should be good, right? No. No matter what I changed that last meal to, it didn't seem to matter. The timing was always the same. And these symptoms were keeping me up at night. It was affecting my sleep. I could tell with my Aura ring that my HRV and resting heart rate were just not where I wanted them to be. And I knew it was digestion related, which was of course then impacting my sleep, which then of course impacts those measurements as well. So it's just this vicious cycle. So I started not eating at night, where I would stop eating at like 4 or 5 p.m., which for me is pretty early considering back when I was bodybuilding, sometimes my last meal was 9 or 10 p.m. So I tried this for a while, and despite finishing my meals around 4 or 5, I was still having digestive symptoms at night. So it kind of indicated to me that there's a couple things that could be going on. Another symptom that I had, but I kind of brushed off, was acid reflux. It was something that I really struggled with in prep, and I took delayed release acid reducers, like Protonics, and that worked. But we know that that's not optimal because we need stomach acid to break down food. Our digestion begins in our mouth. From chewing, we release certain enzymes that break down our food, and then it continues in our stomach, which also requires the acid to break down our food. And then once it's gone through that level of the process, can push the food down into our intestines at a much different level of digestion, right? It's already been broken down in 2 places so that the nutrients can be effectively absorbed in the intestines. Well, I'm having this acid reflux, so I'm reducing the amount of acid that I'm producing by taking these medications that reduce it. So now I'm impairing the digestive process at an earlier point in the system. So maybe I'm having bowel movement issues because of my stomach issues. So because we have acid reflux, we often think we need to suppress stomach acid. But a lot of times, we actually have inadequate acid production. And so if we have inadequate acid production, we don't effectively close the sphincter, or like the valve between our stomach and our esophagus. So we experience that heartburn, that reflux of acid, because there's not enough to kind of trigger that closure. So we think we need to suppress it, but a lot of times it's because we don't have enough stomach acid. So a really common way to address this is to take a supplement called betaine with pepsin. And I started taking this, and it's something you have to be careful with, because if you increase stomach acid too much, you can cause stomach ulcers. We don't want to push too far in the other direction either. But I did a lot of research on this. It's something that I've used in clients before. And I started with the lowest dose, so 1 cap per meal. And this seemed to work pretty well in that I had a couple days of really good digestion. And then digestion got bad again. And same thing, night symptoms. And I thought, what is going on? And I'm like, well, I'm having these symptoms at night regardless of what my last night meal is. So I have to conclude that it's something earlier in my day that's causing the issue. So I started looking into just these symptoms in general and what could be causing them. And one thing you may have heard of before is FODMAPs. And each letter of this acronym, FODMAPs, FODMAPS, stands for a certain compound in foods that commonly irritates digestion. And these foods like ferment in the gut, so then they can cause like gas and bloating and changes in stool. But it's through the fermentation process, which means it's been sitting in the gut for a little bit before you experience the symptoms. So I kind of looked at my diet and the common things that are in like a FODMAP-free diet, and I have a ton of FODMAPs. So I thought, well, I'll address that as well. So this past week, I started kind of pulling things out. Really common things like broccoli is a huge one. That's probably something you may have even noticed in yourself, kind of irritates digestion. Brussels sprouts, but also things like onions and garlic and wheat, not necessarily gluten, but wheat itself. So just kind of looking at the things that I'm having in my diet, all the while still taking this betaine. And what I've learned throughout this process, because I don't want to pretend that I have this figured out by any means yet. I've had actually some challenging digestion today with stomach pain. But what I've learned is that each day I've learned something to move forward with the next day. And I hesitate to share a process with you before I know where it's going. But I think I started this channel as a way to share my journey, and it wasn't just meant to be an expert on areas. It wasn't just meant to come on here and tell you how you should do things, how things should be. But instead it was more of a vlog, a way to share my life. First, my life as an aspiring bodybuilder, and then my life as a professional bodybuilder, and now my life as a recovering bodybuilder and a coach. So over time, I've shifted into the educational space where I can say, in some areas, I am an expert. You know, I know a lot about training, I know a lot about nutrition, and I do actually know a lot about digestion, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the knowledge always translates directly to knowing exactly the process for fixing something. We're always learning along the journey, and I know that I would like to share this journey with you as I learn it, because maybe you're experiencing the same things, and through my trials and tribulations and errors and successes, maybe you pick up something along the way. So instead of waiting until I figured out this whole process, I'm gonna share it with you. Right now, I'm just trying to have the best digestion possible. I'm trying to optimize my life and make sure that I'm loving my body and that I'm at the highest level of health that I want to be. Vitality is a theme of this year for me. I want to feel energized. I want to feel empowered. I want to feel healthy and vital as I approach the rest of my life. And in order to do that, I need to take care of some of these core things, brain health, digestive health, energy, nutrient density, sleep, what I call the big rocks. It's those big things in life that provide the foundation from which we can grow and elevate ourselves and succeed in these other areas of life. But it all starts in the body. And I always knew that. I just thought it started in the body by means of body composition or by means of having a beautiful body. And now I'm learning it's about having a healthy body. But what does that mean? We don't really know, right? It's about learning to connect with your body enough to know what is and isn't for you and what does and doesn't work. And maybe something that works in one season doesn't work in another. But that constant reflection and review and self-awareness and learning and trying new things is a beautiful part of the process of becoming just a healthier and fuller person over time. So I'm excited. This is kind of an intro to this digestive series, and I'm excited to share it with you and just share with you what I learned, what works, what doesn't, where I'm at with things. I'll definitely be updating you on the process, on the supplements that I use, on the foods that I'm trying. But one thing I do want to present as a disclaimer is I'm not advocating any particular diet right now. And what I eat isn't necessarily what's best for you. Instead, what I'm encouraging is more this process of reviewing and reflecting and checking in with my body that I'm doing is something that you can take on for yourself as you start to think about, how is my digestion? How do I feel during the day? Do I feel energized? Do I have energy crashes? Do I feel good in the gym? Do I feel that sense of vitality in my own life? And if not, maybe you can try a review process like mine, apply it to your life, maybe take some of the things that I've tried and learned, or try things on your own so that you can begin to proceed on this journey as well. So I'm, again, excited to share this with you. I do not have it figured out. I've definitely made progress over the past month, but it's going to be a big focus. And I know as someone who's had really poor digestion my whole life, it's probably gonna take some time to establish good digestion. So this is a reminder for both me and for you, if you've struggled with digestion or other symptoms that have lasted for a really long time. Sometimes it can get really discouraging. It can feel like there are no answers and nothing's working. But keep trying and see every day as an opportunity to experiment with yourself. But when you do that, make sure you don't change too much at once. Because I think the temptation at times is to get really drastic, to change everything, and then we have no idea what's working or what's not, or we overcommit. And really, it may have only required one change. I added in the betaine and that really helped with some of my symptoms. It didn't fix everything, so I know that this is still an ongoing journey, but I'm learning and picking up the pieces of truth over time that are allowing me to find the plan or find like the optimal way to structure my day so that I can show up as my best self in each day, which is truly the goal of everything that we pursue. So thank you guys for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. And if you haven't, check out our latest podcast, Time Under Tension. Dee and I do these every week where we talk about different topics of mental health, emotional well-being, and physical health, and everything in between. It's a little bit more conceptual versus this channel, of course, being more educational, fitness, and nutrition related. So if you'd like some different content, maybe a fresh perspective, definitely go check that out and be sure to like and subscribe to that as well. You can watch that on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. But stay tuned, I'll be covering a full series and probably just an ongoing journey of my digestion. It's not going to be structured, it's just going to be the raw and real truth of what I'm experimenting with, what's working, what's not, and hopefully, eventually, what the entire healing process has looked like.